Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly. It's Wednesday, the 10th of December 2025. I'm your host, Chris Gallagher, and we're going to talk about Celtic. We're going to pick up and pick off all of the key points from the last week in the world of Glasgow Celtic. I've got a killer panel for you. Stuart Dugan, hello there. How are you, sir?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. This is the first time that we've recorded this, and I feel great, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, you okay, Stu?
I hope so. I really hope so.
We did a pre-record. We tried to do this the first time, and Stu kind of froze up.
It was a false start.
Yeah,
we're going to keep an eye on it.
We're going to keep an eye on it. It's good to hear from you. You're a top man. We're also joined by the fantastic Barry Gallagher. Hello, Barry. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm just delighted that Stuart is back from the dead.
There you go.
Very good. Yeah, the quilter. Get involved. Still on Bandcamp, Stu?
Probably. I don't know. I've not looked at it in a while, but boy, maybe. Got one more in me, I'm sure, at some point.
At some point.
I'll let you know.
Great stuff. Look, there's lots to talk about. Some positive, some negative, and some other things that we're going to look ahead towards. We're going to look back at the Celtic game against Hearts at the weekend. Then I think we'll have just a talk about the kind of media coverage and the fallout from that, because it's been incredible, not in a positive way. Then we can talk, I think, about Nancy's appointment. Obviously, the appointment came out before the Dundee game last week. We touched briefly on it last Thursday, but what we'll do is we'll touch on it a little bit more. Then we can look at the press conference for the Roma game. We'll then talk about the Roma game, and then if we've got time, we'll look ahead to the League Cup final. If we don't have time for the League Cup final to look into it in detail, if you sign up at thecynic.co, or you search for the Cynic on Patreon, we'll have coverage of the League Cup final, previews and reactions on our wonderful subscription service, so check it out. I've got an opening question for you before we get to the actual bones of the game. Have you ever seen such a frenzied reaction to a Celtic loss? Let's go straight to Stuart Dugan.
I think frenzied is certainly one word for it. I think certainly not so early in someone's tenure. I think you could pretty safely say that. I've been really quite taken aback by the fallout from it, from Celtic fans, as much as I know we're going to go on and talk about mainstream media and how some of it's been reported. But yeah, very, very strange. I think that you can't really discuss all of this without the full context of what's happened. Celtic have had a dreadful season. They've taken 5 or 6 weeks to appoint an interim manager. In that period of time, the board have essentially used a club legend as a sort of human shield. They've got through a run of fixtures where they've won, really haven't played particularly well, and at a point in which you have maybe 3 of the most difficult and decisive games that we've had so far in the season, you're bringing in a manager who English is not his first language. He's probably extremely jet lagged coming from the other side of the world. You're giving him a day and a half to prepare against a team that, whatever you think of them, hasn't lost. They've lost once this season, and went out and looked like he'd got quite a lot of his ideas across, at least initially. Celtic conceded 2 diabolical goals from individual errors, essentially, and yet some people were calling for his head. Like, I've literally seen people saying that this should be over and that this is a failed experiment and that it won't last, and hopefully it won't last long, and things like that. And I just think that's insane. And I think that we can talk about the specifics. I'm not joking. I genuinely didn't know that Wilfried Nancy had worn green shoes until the fallout from all these things. All the stuff with the tactics board, the notion that some of these things are not befitting of a Celtic manager or in some way indicative that this guy is out his depth and doesn't understand it, is just mind-blowing to me. And I think it's really embarrassing. And I think that it was Alan Edgar we were talking to earlier this week said there are clearly lots of people out with Celtic, the mainstream media, Rangers fans, Hearts fans, probably a lot of people in Scottish football that are desperate for Celtic to have appointed a Russell Martin or Pedro Caixinha-esque joke, and it would really help if we didn't sort of facilitate some of
do the work for them.
Do the work for them. And I think that I'm quite positive about what Wilfried Nancy could bring to Celtic. That is by no means suggesting that I think he will be really successful. He might be a joke, but there is no way of knowing that after one game, especially a game in which you saw some green shoots from the things that...
Green shoes or green shoots?
Bit of both.
Ryan Stevenson over here.
I know.
Oh, neck tattoo.
Yeah, stuff that you knew that he was going to do in advance of arriving as well. So the whole thing I found pretty baffling and quite embarrassing, but we can kind of unpick it and see what happens.
Great opening gambit, Stu. I'm very proud of you.
I literally didn't speak the first time you asked me my name, so hopefully
Certainly up. Barry, what about yourself? How are you feeling it about just the reaction to everything that's happened and about everything that's happened? The game.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And I think the point about the media and people being desperate for him to be this sort of joke figure, it's just kind of indicative of... It's almost like I listened to Radio Scotland on the way home from the game on Sunday, and I think Ryan Stevenson was on that, I think anyway, and just the way that they sort of ridiculed him, and it's like that sort of closed boys shop, like, oh, he's not from here, they prefer that we had the merry-go-round British manager. And I think the point that you made, Gall, the other day was people are so desperate to cling on to the tales of England that anything that is not from the EPL or English football is to be looked down upon.
Yeah.
Even more so when it's out with Europe. But in terms of the reaction to the game as well, it's interesting when you think of some of the most successful managers we've had in recent history who lost their first game as well. You think Strachan lost Heart Media.
That's right.
Rodgers lost to Lincoln Red Imps.
Yep.
Wim Jansen lost to Hibs.
Yep.
So he's in good company. Obviously, we'd have preferred it if we'd won. Oh yeah, Ange as well. Yeah. So
Hearts.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just crazy, and I hate all those AI with the Etch a Sketch and the
not for me, man.
The clown face and all that, and it's just disrespectful. I think more than anything, and I think you're starting to see maybe the other side of it now. I know I was listening to Clyde for my sins today, but the panel on they were kind of saying like it's common practice for a tactics board. It would maybe be done on an iPad electronically or maybe in the dressing room. But I think the point that Stuart made is a good one, and Ross McCormick was making the point as well on Clyde that if English isn't his first language and he doesn't really have relationships with the players yet, the best way to show McGregor was to actually show him rather than try and explain, because he had that kind of short, sharp break and play to try and explain what he was hoping to do. And what has encouraged me in the days since, I know that a couple of the players have come out, I think Trusty today, I think Tierney the other day, said they've been impressed with the training so far, and it's just crazy, and it's society now where they just want instant results and instant feedback, and people don't really have the attention span, maybe that's maybe being harsh, but to stick with a project. And I think Stu made the point there as well that he might be great, he might not be great, but it's ludicrous to kind of write him off after less than a week on the job.
Yeah, sure.
Just because we have started talking about the tactics board, and obviously it's become this totem of the day. Everyone knew what formation Wilfried Nancy played. It's extremely well documented, and we've had much more time than we normally would to really get under the skin of a new manager coming in, because we've known it's coming for so long. The other thing that he's talked about he talked about in his opening press conference, etc., is that the main thing that he wants to do with his teams is provide them with clarity for what he wants them to do. So I think that's all it really is. It's not... I've seen some takes where it's like, oh, he's so arrogant that he thinks he knows the game better than this person or that, or it's some new modern... What an odd... In what other industry would it be like, oh, we don't want to use all the tools at our disposal, or we don't want to try and be better at it? And you know what? I can also accept that it is like something to make fun of, because I'm not so thin-skinned that you can't accept like people making fun of you if there's something like quite low-hanging fruit. And you would do it if it was a Rangers manager, etc. What I find really odd is Celtic fans that have really turned the gun on him for that, and as if he's lost some modicum of credibility with them straight away for that.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think I agree the idea that I'm not thin-skinned. Like, if Celtic had won 5-0, I'm not sure it would have even been a talking point.
I think even if you'd drawn, I mean, if we're talking, we're not quite into talking about the game and its ins and outs, but Celtic had 3 or 4 real gilt-edged chances and conceded 2 dreadful goals. Hearts didn't really create an enormous amount in the game. It's absolutely like on any other day, you could have come away with a point or you could have won that game pretty much with the exact same tactical sort of setup and game plan.
And by the way, see if this was 4 months into his tenure, I'd be far more cutting about the fact that we weren't taking our chances and that. I'd probably, if this was 4 months into it, I would be more critical than I would be if he'd had 1.5 training sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think people, like, the other point I want to make just quickly is, see, we've talked about this on the Cynic.co the last couple of days, but it's something we've always talked about. When Dr. Joseph Venglos was appointed Celtic manager, they were calling him a geriatric. They were being really disrespectful. What's he done? This is a man who got Czechoslovakia to the semi-finals of the World Cup. They were, I think it was semi-finals or quarter-finals. But
Same thing.
Yeah.
I think it was the same.
I think it was the same. Yeah, Italian 90, yeah.
Thing.
But they were really, really critical of him. Hugh Keevins was going to race him and all this stuff. Like, that was what, 1998?
Mm-hmm.
We've just not moved on.
No,
Just not moved on.
It's just the one thing that got me thinking about was people just latch on to things to make fun of people for when results don't go their way. And remember when Steve McLaren was England manager and he had the Brawley and they became the Wally with the Brawley, and Kashinya and the hedge and stuff like that.
Those are two.
funny.
Those are two extremely extreme examples, though.
Yes, yeah, but it's just it's a cruelty. I think obviously Kashinya was funny, but I hope, and he kind of like, not to jump too far ahead, but in the press conference today, he addressed that and he said he probably will use it again in the future. He doesn't know, and I hope he does. I hope he continues to lean into it.
See if it gets his results. I can't give a fuck what he uses.
The other thing is that I've seen a few people report that after those interactions, there was like an uptick in terms of like stats of how many chances were created and also Tierney scores and stuff. I'm not saying that it's one or the other, but he absolutely got his point across. And would you rather have someone proactively trying to do what he can to change the circumstances, or do you want a Brendan Rodgers type situation of someone just sort of writing in his notebook and sneering and waiting? And just, sorry, I'm amazed at the vast sort of different quarters that you're getting this sort of critique from. I listened to the Tifo Football podcast, and John McKenzie and JJ Bull, who are like big stats guys, John McKenzie was laughing at it, and he was like, I just think it's so odd to see. He's like, if you're not getting your point across, you should just take the L and then, address it midweek, 'cause it's so embarrassing. I'm like, how soft are you? That's
what are we doing?
I know.
Yeah, I just thought as well, just as you were talking there, criticism Mowbray used to get for just sitting there kind of slumped on the bench, not doing anything. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And here's the thing, right? And let's start talking about the game a little bit. But like, the fact is, he saw there was something wrong, used the tactics board because English isn't his first language and the players maybe aren't aware of his accent, to change it. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to affect change on the pitch using the best tool able to do that, and he get criticised for it.
Yeah.
I'm saying this to Stu, like, I think there's a weird, like, in Scottish, British sort of culture where people are afraid of embarrassment, and it's like he's going out to make a public show of him doing something, and if it doesn't work, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I kind of get garner from that a little bit.
It's so weird that is quite you could say it's like a West of Scotland thing, but it probably is more of like a British thing, an English thing as well. But yet the English game is dominated by really successful, really innovative foreign coaches and foreign managers, and it's English managers that are now trying to adopt these sorts of things. And I'm not suggesting that like Wilfried Nancy and the way he's doing it is like some brand new visionary thing, but as he described it today, he's like, it's just a tool that I use to help me, whether it's to understand the data that he's been given on what's happening during the game, or whether it's the information that he wants to put across to his team. So why wouldn't you? And I also think as well, see if that was Kieran McKenna, do you think that people would be taking the piss out of him as much? No. Or is it because he's not from around here, essentially?
Yeah.
I think that is a big element of it. And
yep.
It's
sinister.
It's sinister, absolutely. In terms of the game itself, Barry, just kind of general. We did do a reaction podcast, so for a more defined reaction, you can go back and listen to that. And also, we did a full tactical debrief stats breakdown with our good friend Will, which is available on the Cynic.co. Barry, what was your experience of watching the game?
I think to kind of go right back to we were obviously at the march before
of course,
the game.
Yeah.
And I think as we were looking along, that's when the team came out, and I was enthused. Like, probably retrospectively, I think maybe it wasn't wise to kind of change it up so much in such a short period of time, but that can't take away I was more excited when I saw, like, all right, we've got 4 central midfielders in there, definitely going 3 at the back. So we went in, and then I think we started brightly. You could see that there was a difference from how we had been playing. I think that it was we were having that spare man quite a lot when we played out, but I think the kind of story of our season is that we just don't have the quality, and I think the kind of final pass from the likes of Negrin and
we'll go on to him.
Yep, Taneke, even though he kind of created the best chance that we had in the game, I would say, is that he can't be a miracle worker. Like O'Neill, as Stuart said, he got the results, but the performances weren't great, particularly towards the end. And I think it's just the board have weakened the squad so much that can't be forgotten. And I think it's almost a case now of we just try and get through to January. But in terms of the game itself, I thought there were positives, but it comes down to a mentality thing as well. As soon as there was a bit of adversity, you could see that the heads just went down, both on the pitch and in the stands. And I think that's just the fragility of where we are as a club right now, because I was talking to friends about this time last year, and it's only, 13 months ago that we maybe had one of the best performances I've ever seen a Celtic team put in against Leipzig at home. And the drop-off in quality and performance levels from them is night and day. So we have, as a club, created this squad. Obviously, we can't legislate for the injuries, but it was encouraging to see something different. And obviously, it never came to the fruition, the result we wanted. But I think, again, not to jump too far, but listening to Nancy and Trusty tonight, like they said that they're hopeful and they've seen enough positives in training this week that they are getting more used to it. And again, it's still very early days because it's a week ago, probably right now, that it was announced.
Yeah.
But yeah, disappointing the way that we didn't bounce back to get an equaliser and then going obviously 2-0 down. But just another thing that I don't think has really been mentioned, I thought the referee was shocking. Was really bad. And then the linesman at my side, I've not seen it back because I refuse to watch back highlights when we lose, but I'm certain the shot from Shanklin, he was offside.
Very, very close. Very close.
Yeah, I was losing my shit at that linesman. And I just knew it. It's one of those ones you just know that it's going to come back to bite you, and then 30 seconds later the ball's in the back of the net. So, yeah, I think the positives are that I think we got in behind Hearts quite a lot. We put them under pressure, as I said, with the spare man. And I think that if we get the players, or the players get more used to this way of playing, it will be chaotic, but I think it'll be very exciting as well. So it's just a case of kind of hanging in there and getting through this week.
On that, I'm going to spatter in some stats from our good friend Will. He kind of gave us some stats. Ball recoveries in the opposition half. So he looked at the game against Hearts on Sunday. He looked at Brendan Rodgers' last game against Hearts when we lost at Tynecastle, and he looked at Martin O'Neill's last game against Dundee. Ball recoveries in the opposition half. Martin O'Neill, 68. Rodgers, 100. Nancy, 107. High and fast. And that's what we need to do. Stu, your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I thought that obviously it's been pretty well documented that the first half, probably up to the goal, maybe just before, I thought it was really exciting, and I thought that pretty quickly you're starting to see, Will put it the other day, direction of travel. That's how he wants his team to play. The way that we progressed the ball really quickly, the intensity with the press, these are things that have been quite absent. They were, when you're referencing the Leipzig game, they were there then. And we've just regressed and regressed, both with the quality of personnel and maybe just a little bit of malaise and whatever has been happening behind the scenes with Brendan Rodgers' sort of end of his tenure. I just thought that was quite exciting. I thought it was pretty evident that you had some square pegs in round holes for this system.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have any issue with them changing the system, and that's another thing that I found quite odd in in the aftermath of this, or you should have kept it how O'Neill did it. How does Wilfried Nancy know how Martin O'Neill was setting up coaching the team? Do you mean that you just want them to play 4-3-3?
Yeah.
Because that's... why would he come in and do that? And why, when you've appointed him for... You know exactly how he plays and you know what his strengths are, why would he come in and do anything differently? I don't understand that.
Also, he's been watching every game that this team have played this season.
6 weeks as well. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably will, yeah.
I think you can absolutely question the timing of when the board have brought him in, whether it's too late, as in should have been the international break so that he could at least get 1 or 2 games, maybe less consequential games, or does he wait until after the cup final, for example? You give O'Neill that stretch, but the knock-on effect is that he doesn't have as much time to assess the squad before a very important transfer window. You can argue all day that they've got that wrong. The failings of the Celtic board, I think, are really, really clear on this one. But Nancy, again, a couple of times in his pressers has been quite explicit that he doesn't see himself so much as a coach but a leader. Whether or not you want to subscribe to that, maybe that's too new age and you take against that. And I can understand that. For some people, they might just be like, just win the game. I don't want to hear any of this. But if that is his role and that's how he sees himself, I don't see how you can come in and on your first day go, right, well, we'll just do what that guy did. What was the last guy doing? Like a sort of bad substitute teacher or something like that coming in. What was he doing? Like, we'll just keep that going and then suddenly come in with these new ideas. How do you expect to get buy-in from the players? How do you expect to get a philosophy across if you don't believe that it's actually the best way to get results? It's not that he's stumbled upon 3-4-3 because he fancies it. He obviously is passionate about that and he obviously thinks that's the best way to win games. And I would actually argue that compared to some of the performances we saw I know O'Neill got over the line in those last 3 games, but if you look at St Mirren, Hibs and Dundee, Celtic were really poor at progressing the ball. There wasn't a huge amount of intensity. It had kind of come out of the team when we got that bounce of him coming in. So I think it does require something to change, and I think that we did see how that could look. I would... as you rightly point out, the final ball and some of the quality and that was dreadful, but I think players were rushing a lot and I don't think they realised how much time and space that they have, and perhaps once you get more used to that system you realise that you don't have to rush the pass because someone is like very available, and I think that that's something that will improve. But it looked like you were getting some joy from it straight away, which is in the most difficult circumstances quite positive, I think.
Yeah, I think just another stat, I'm not going to go run through lots of stats, I'll just give you another one, but pressing intensity, passes per defensive action. So how many passes you let the opposition make before you try and press them and get the ball back. Martin O'Neill was 10, so he would let the opposition play with the ball 10 passes before we stepped in. Rodgers was 7.5, but Nancy's was 8. So that pressing intensity was ratcheted up from, I know 2 passes doesn't sound a lot, but in the grand scheme of the actual game, it is quite a bit. So the intensity was kind of there. Look, we're not going to sit here and say it was, Celtic lost, right? But can I just say, that first goal that we lost, I don't know what the manager's supposed to do when the captain's standing in the box, putting his hand up, when, your centre halves are standing, putting that, and everyone your goalkeeper doesn't dive. I don't know how do you uncoach that? You assume when you come into a squad who have won titles and have had intensity that they would play to the whistle at least, Barry?
Yeah, it was crazy. Obviously, I'm down the other end.
I went bananas, by the way.
Yeah, I was certain it was offside, and then it almost takes the wind out yourselves when someone texts and, yeah, he's onside. No, he's not. You don't even have a fucking game. But it's schoolboy stuff, and I've kind of seen that phrase used quite a lot. But it's crazy that so many of them stopped. Like, fair enough if you can maybe legislate if someone's like kind of sleeping or whatever, and
Braga kind of stops.
Paul Tisdale was sleeping, wasn't he? Yeah. But we'll get to him. But
Braga stops and then starts again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's how switched off the players are.
I'm fucking sick of that song, by the way, because that's it near him. But schoolboy stuff, and it's not a good look for your kind of, particularly the captain. I think we've spoken on here before about a Celtic captain as something special. I know that people argue as the captain as important as it used to be, but he's your kind of front and centre, and he leads by example. And if he's doing that, it's not a great look. But like you say, that's not on the manager. And maybe I've seen people say, maybe they didn't know where they were supposed to be. But you don't stop. 2 managers ago, once told them that famously.
Well, I think that it speaks to a drop in just standards of
that's it. Yeah.
That's it. When do you stop and when you don't stop? And I think that you can look at that. 2 really culpable parties. Arne Engels perhaps not getting back in as quick as he can when play's still very live.
Is it because he steps back on that plays them in? Is that
it's
what
because
happens?
he doesn't get out quick enough that the first phase of play. They're onside because they are quite deep. Yeah. I was very critical of him at first. I have a little bit of sympathy for him because he's just slid out and he's done this kind of like lung busting run. But the standards of the club have to be, in a game like that, you're not entitled to just like, well, you've done your wee bit of running there. You do have to play to the whistle. Same goes for McGregor, same goes for Trusty, same goes for Schmeichel and Hatate as well. So they have to learn from that.
Can I jump in? Do you think that's as a result of VAR?
What do you mean?
Like the fact that they've stopped thinking, oh, he's offside, VAR will pull it back? Do you think if VAR wasn't there, they wouldn't have stopped?
I think they still would have stopped.
I think it was more indicative of...
I don't think VAR goes through.
I think it was more indicative of we can take a breather. That phase of play is over, and I don't think that's obviously very good.
No.
The other thing, I feel like I'm not like a real... I'm a Wilfried Nancy guy, and I think that he's the way in the future. But I do feel particularly defensive of just the way that he has personally been sort of singled out for this. Everything he said post-match is extremely sensible and extremely accurate, where he's like, well, we need to work harder than that. You can't just... It's a second phase of play. You have to stay live, all that. Then he also said at the end, why are we trying to just constantly cross the ball in against this big team? Don't you want a coach that calls that out instead of someone like Brendan Rodgers that's going to gaslight you and tell you that they were really, really good and it was just, that's it and we'll go back and we'll try harder? Like, he's saying the very specific things that you can all see are wrong with the team. Yeah.
The only manager we've had in contemporary times that I've enjoyed his post-match stuff is Postecoglou, because he was so honest, right? Didn't necessarily completely click for me with Postecoglou, but I liked the fact he wouldn't come out and gaslight you. Martin O'Neill is someone who was fiercely protective of his players, so I understand that. The same way Lennon, I understand the idea of protecting the players, right? But there needs to be a balance, and hopefully Nancy has that balance, because, as you say, Stuart, if he came out and went, unlucky, what are you going to do? Good performance, other than that, we'll try again, we'll go again, we're disappointed. It's not the same as, we need to work on some shit, pal. I'll be honest with you, this isn't ideal. Just one other thing, we played far more vertically. Passes into the final third, Nancy had 93, O'Neill had 78. And Rodgers at 65. The reason I'm highlighting that is because the underlying stats, I know people hear the phrase underlying stats and they'll instantly turn off, which is fine. I get that. But the underlying stats for the performance versus Martin O'Neill's last game and versus Rodgers' last game are extremely good, which means that if we don't concede that first goal, I think we probably win, or at least draw. I think if we created, the Maeda chance, Barry, you score that, it's a different world. Because I think I can sit and say this now, but I thought Hearts were very limited in what they did. I think they're a very industrial side. I think they'll get to a certain part of the season where they might struggle to create. But the smash and grab job, fair play to them, but I think it was all our own doing.
Yeah, that Dyson miss was something else. I don't know how he's managed to do that. At first, though, I was being harsh on Tereki. I kind of thought that when he chested that ball down, if that was someone who... I think if that was, say, Jota when he first came into Celtic, he would have chested that down and taken it on himself. But maybe it was unselfish, and maybe because he is lacking a wee bit of confidence, but he put it on a plate for Dyson. I don't know why Dyson has to take that extra touch.
No.
I think just smash it, just place it in the corner, do something. But that was a really good move. I think carved them open, and the fact that Taneki put it on a plate, Dyson has to score that, and I just feel that Dyson of last season probably would have scored it when he was in that kind of red hot form. But as you say, if he scores that, it's a different game, a totally different game. It gives us the whole crowd a boost, because I think, again, we haven't mentioned it yet, but the fact that the Green Brigade weren't there, the atmosphere was a wee bit strange, the weather obviously was horrendous as well, and it just, the longer it went on without us scoring, and then obviously I think we kind of tailed off a wee bit even before Hearts scored, and it just kind of, it was a kind of weird atmosphere around the place. But like you say, if that goal goes in, the whole place is up, and and I think it would have been different. But listening to you, and I listened to Will the other day, was that I think it's encouraging, because how often have we said that if you aren't performing well and still getting the results, your luck will run out. So hopefully in the reverse, that if we aren't getting the results but we're starting to play better and better, and I think that's the point that Nancy was trying to make, wasn't it? Like, it's not a case of, I'd rather play well and lose. It's like, they go hand in hand. If you play well, more often than not, you're going to put a run together.
Exactly. And that, I was saying to Chris before we started, there's a video of Postecoglou, I think, from his very first press conference, and he says almost verbatim the exact same thing, where he just wants to get better every day. It's all performance based. So people jumping on the fact that, he said he's not interested in wins or losses, he doesn't get it. I was like, give the guy a break. That's not what he's saying. And it's real confirmation bias. If you didn't want him coming to the club, and if you wanted Martin O'Neill to still be there, I can understand why you're looking for anything to sort of stick him with, but it's just not really common sense. I think you're right as well about the air kind of coming out the team ever so slightly before the goal, almost like we'd shot our best shot.
Yeah.
The Maeda chance is obviously that is a sitter, and even if he doesn't take that extra touch and shoots, Yang's onside, and he could roll the ball to Yang, and then Yang's got a very easy finish. The one beforehand, he should do much, much better with, the one that he just sort of splashed with his left foot.
Yeah.
I feel like that is now maybe starting, having looked at the team in this new system, you are starting to see square pegs and round holes, as I say, and maybe Maeda as the striker isn't the best option.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think that if we get to, if we need, obviously we need to get to January in a position ideally at least equal with Hearts, because obviously we're now 3 points behind, but we've got a game in hand. We're going to have to figure something out with the striking situation. So whether that's Iheanacho, whether that's you play Kenny and you just play through and just, it might take him time to get back up to speed, or whether that's, I don't know. I mean, Iheanacho, Kenny, Shin, Yamada, maybe. I don't know. It needs to be something, because I think we're all Dyson Maeda fans, but he's going to be away, and there's a chance he could be away in 3 weeks. So like, we've got 3 weeks, we've got a lot of games, we need to figure something out.
I think that you can get more out of his skill set in that system as well, because I thought that
I agree. Yeah.
The cushioned sort of chest down, that's as good a thing as I've seen Tenecti do individually in his time at Celtic, and obviously we don't even score from it. Over the piece, I thought he was really, really poor, really poor, and I don't think that he'll start tomorrow. I was talking about it yesterday, that watching the game back, there's a moment where for about the 6th or 7th time, Tenecki's in a really good position to go by his man and put a ball in, and he almost just like falls over his feet, and the camera's cut back to Nancy, and he laughs at him. He's just like, what can you do with that? He like oddly, like visibly laughs, then he kind of claps him, and it's when initially Nygren comes off as a substitute, and then he changes it and he takes Tenecki off instead. So I'm not saying that like that's him finished or whatever, but I think that if you're wanting someone that can have the skill set of getting up and down all day long on the left hand side and offer you something attacking and defensively, Dyson is much better at that. What is going on with Kelechi Iheanacho's fitness? Is he going to go to the AFCON? Because he's in the extended squad, so I don't know whether or not he's not going because of that, or I don't know.
I think we just need to try and get him into the team as soon as possible.
Do you know what I was thinking about Tenecki? The way he was, and you calm down when I say this name, Reggie Blinker.
I thought you were going to say Tom Rogic.
But just, remember, Reggie Blinker replaced Paul Di Canio essentially, and
traded. Remember that?
Traded. But it was like, I remember Blinker about 4 or 5 months into his tenure at Celtic, and there was a game at Celtic Park, and I can't remember the team, but I remember the whole stadium just, every time he touched the ball, it was like, for fuck's, like, you're not doing, and it affected him. Yeah. And it started to affect Tenecki, and I think maybe Nancy was right to take him off, because it really was affecting his play, but there's very few other options. What did you make of Yang?
I thought he started brightly, but again, I think he kind of faded just as brightly as he shone, as quickly. But I think we could argue that those, so Tenecki and Yaya, are going to be the most two important players, not them specifically, but those two wide wing backs, whoever, are going to be so important. And they just don't have the quality, do they? I thought he was brighter than he has been, and I think I can't remember who said it on one of the pods earlier this week, but there's a reason why O'Neill was leaving Tanecki out, and I think he has to come back out again, because if you think of Tanecki and Nygren, they're probably, I know that Tierney, but he was done before a pre-contract, but they're sort of pin-up signings for the summer, aren't they? And I thought the two of them were probably the worst two on the park. But in terms of Yang, I think he might enjoy playing that role, but I think long term he's not the answer. So the two positions I think that are glaringly obvious for January is the striker and the right winger / wing back.
When we did the debrief, Will was talking about how McAtee, who plays for Hearts, was doing a sort of man marking job in Hatate that kind of took him out of the position, which means that other position, that other number 10, becomes really important, because they'll actually have a little bit more space, because there'll be less kind of impact. But Nygren had an absolute stinker, to the point where when it was him, when it was changed that it was he wasn't coming off, I think half of the section around me started almost booing. If you know, Nygren's someone, Stu, that, you know, he is new. He's already had 3 Celtic managers in 5 months. You know, I do have some sympathy for him, but also he does flat to deceive at times.
He does. He's got he's quite a mercurial player, because he is. I think he's definitely our top goal scorer, and certainly goal contributions as well. Nothing. I think he was having a particularly bad game at the weekend, and I think there were issues with maybe understanding the system and where he should be playing and how he should be playing, but just the X's and O's, the basics of controlling
passing.
the ball and passing were really, really not there. And it is a problem, because we're so limited in what you can do. Realistically, it's him or it's Luke McCowan. There isn't really anyone else that you can put in there, unless you wanted. I saw Forrest was back in training. Do you want to play Forrest in there?
Well, our good friend, we keep bringing Will up, but he's did great contributions this season. He scouted Balikwisha before he was at Antwerp, and he said he started off as a number 10 and he performed really well as a number 10. I mean, he's someone that I don't know if I'd even trust him to perform.
I think there must be issues there as well, though, because he obviously missed 6 games under O'Neill. Like, he didn't feature at all. And O'Neill had mentioned him by name in the press a couple of times, and I think that was like his best hope of like putting an arm around him, essentially saying like, this guy, there's something not quite right, or maybe you'll be like one for the future, sort of, to try and diffuse it a little bit. I agree with you about Tanecki having to come out, but he will literally be away at the AFCON from after Sunday, so someone does have to come out. Balikwisha, I think, is also in the
Congo
he was
squad.
in the last Congo squad, so he might be away as well. So you are really, really short for these last couple of weeks, and you're also banking on, ideally, the Celtic board doing business quickly, which we know they're probably not going to do. So it's very, very tricky. I just think that you can't lose that context as well when you're critiquing the manager, that there might be ways around this. It might well be that, you know, Maeda plays on the left, and then or Yang plays on the left, and it's then maybe like a Colby Donovan or someone that has to come in and play on the right, because we just literally don't have the bodies there. And I think you can see that in a perfect world, if you had, for example, Alistair Johnston playing where Trusty played, if you had Trusty playing where Scales was playing, if you had a striker playing where Maeda was playing, quickly you can be like, okay, that's there's really something there. But even if you can get to an 11, we don't have the depth in the squad to then make that sustainable when you're playing 2 or 3 games a week.
Yeah, so game finished 2-1. It didn't really affect too much in terms of, you know, we could have went ahead of Hearts, but if we win our game in hand, we go equal with them. And I'll be honest, see, if you'd said to me after we lost to them at Tynecastle that come December, you'll have a game in hand, and if you win it, you go equal with them, I would have bit your hand off, but also I just wouldn't have believed you. Yeah. I just want to, moving away from the game, I'm just going to read out some of these comments from the mainstream media. So there was a headline, and it was Celtic players already frustrated with Wilfried Nancy as boss drops day 1 Parkhead pledge. Right, that's a headline. Now, I didn't click on it, but someone did click on it and sent me a screenshot of it, and it's Jackie McNamara saying, "I think some of the players will be frustrated. Maybe." Who knows? I don't know the players. Do you know what I mean? Then another headline, Martin O'Neill pitched to Celtic board and different guys as Wilfried Nancy alarm bells ring. It's after 90 minutes. Wilfried Nancy warned Celtic clock will start ticking if he doesn't do one thing after Martin O'Neill laid all the success on a plate. And then Sam Allardyce calling him a school teacher. I mean, Sam Allardyce is... Yeah, let's not get personal on the podcast.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I mean, they're out for blood. He doesn't suit the narrative in a lot of ways. They didn't go for Martin as quickly as they went for Nancy. It's all... Then everyone's getting these WhatsApp rumours about, you know, how everyone hates him and it's it's all this weird stuff, which was very pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Very COVID. Just let's see.
The one that I'm surprised hasn't had his say is Lennon. He'll stick the knife in him.
But then again, if he's so pro-board, he probably wants to keep his powder dry until there's a sniff at a job, maybe.
Yeah.
Which there won't be, because Nancy's going to be a big success.
I actually think that they've lost the run of themselves in excitement that they think that they can generate this sort of storm that has probably unified a section of Celtic fans that had been quite annoyed with the tactics board and stuff like that, because now it becomes... And that's the news cycle has gone in the last 48 hours, where Chris Sutton was kind of like a bit critical of Nancy, to now he's written a midweek article in defence of people that are attacking Nancy for these things. So it's sort of eating its own tail already.
Yeah, that's true.
Tomorrow's a very, very difficult game. In any season, in any walk of life, that's a difficult game, and I'm not confident that Celtic will get a result, and I think that this will intensify. Mm-hmm. And so it is just kind of hard hats on time for the support and for him. But he doesn't seem particularly fazed by it, not in a way that he doesn't understand it, just in a way that he's just doing what he can do in the very difficult circumstances that he's sort of facing. But yeah, it's absolutely absurd. Another thing going against him is honestly how bad Russell Martin's tenure went, because he's getting bracketed as this new age manager that's in the same vein, and Russell Martin's never won a thing, and Wilfried Nancy has won tournaments.
Got to the final
he got asked today. I know we're going to come onto the press conference. It was one of the most disrespectful things I've heard in a long time, where the reporter asked him, he was like, "So Wilfried, it's your first game in Europe. Do you understand what the level will be playing against Roma?" Slowed down the way he was speaking, as if he was an absolute fucking idiot. And Nancy was extremely polite, and he said, "Yeah, I do understand." He's like, "I know it's my first game in the Europa League." He's like, "With respect, I did play in the Champions League in the Americas and the CONCACAF. And also, I am European, was born in France, have played professional football in France. So yes, I understand the concept of like European football." How fucking stupid do people think he is?
This was the question. Do you know what to expect in terms of, one, the atmosphere here at Celtic Park for one of those nights, and two, the challenge the opposition will present tonight? His reply was, "First of all, the first game, it's an honour for me to play in the Europa Cup and Europa League. But also, we have the humility. Don't forget that I've been a runner-up in the Champions League and the CONCACAF. So I know what it means. Now I come from Europe. I know I played in Europe." I'm sorry. That's obviously just taken from how he said it. "I've come from Europe. I know how we play in Europe. And obviously this is, again, with a lot of humility, this is something I'm looking forward to. Obviously, Gasparini is the Roma coach. He's a coach I respect." Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's like, do you know who you're playing tomorrow?
Do you know what it reminded me of? I remember before Postecoglou's first game, they said, like, "Have you ever heard of Hearts?"
Yeah.
Said,
I'm not from the fucking moon, mate. Because it's like, have you ever heard of Hearts? And he's like, "I had 4 Hearts players in my fucking
national squad." Yeah, it's just disrespectful. And much, just to kind of pick up on the point you made, I don't hold out much hope for tomorrow. And I think even Celtic at that level I was talking about in November last year when they beat Leipzig, there's no guarantees that we would have beaten Roma then. But that doesn't sort of keep the wolves from the door, almost, for a bit of a phrase. And then that will ramp up the intensity for Sunday as well.
I think that the way that people are stripping context of the situation. And
Aye.
I can almost understand it because fans are so angry at just the nature of how things have gone this season, how they've been treated, and they need someone to sort of lash out at. And it's a very easy thing if you've been given this club legend and everything's kind of got a bit better. It's very easy to point at this new thing and go, that's the problem. But remember who put him there, and remember when they put him there, and the circumstances with which he's been put there.
And the opportunities they had to put him in earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember when we played, and this is the thing, right? So see, when Martin O'Neill was the manager of Celtic the first time around, the first game was Dundee United away, right? And Larsson scores and Sutton scores. And I remember that game, and it was Dundee United were obviously a better side and all that. But I remember thinking at the time, like, we got Larsson and all that, and it was fine, and we won, and we won okay, and it was an okay game. But he had a whole summer, and he brought in lots of players, big players that we could never bring in now. If you take that Martin O'Neill and you drop him into this situation where he's had one and a half training sessions, maybe he wins, but maybe he doesn't. Like, if you drop any manager into that situation, maybe they win, but maybe they don't. And I think the context is very important of all this. If you don't like Nancy, you don't like the MLS, you don't think... Well, here's a point I'll make. If you don't think if Celtic should be recruiting for the MLS because you don't regard it as a quality enough league, right? I disagree with that, but that's what the Celtic board have done.
Yeah. So who's the blame lie with?
Yeah, so the blame, all of this comes down to how the club has been run. And I want to highlight something which I found fundamentally shocking. When Wilfried Nancy was presented at a press conference, the CEO wasn't there. The CEO did a separate fucking interview with in-house media about how much we always wanted them and how great we are, and we wanted our man and we got our man and all this. He wasn't in front of the media. He wasn't in front of course, the fan media has now been... Fan media's access has been revoked indefinitely. I think maybe the fan media, if Michael Nicholson had been sitting there, would have asked difficult questions. And I don't think he wanted to even face the idea of the mainstream media asking him any sort of difficult question. It's awful. It's horribly run. Barry, the fact that the CEO wasn't there to present to the media, to anyone, to the support, the new manager, it was all done in wee clips on Instagram and all that. What's happened?
Yeah, I can't ever remember that being the case before, because if you think back to Rodgers, he was flanked, wasn't he, by Nicholson and Law?
Yeah.
And I think even back to when O'Neill was appointed, it was Alan McDonald, I think, was the kind of CEO. But it's like they're hiding from it, and it's in sort of stark contrast to the meeting that the collective had back in October, where they said nothing's wrong, we're doing a good job. But every kind of action they've shown since that, they know that they are fucked up. They know, like, they didn't do the job in the transfer market, which they've since admitted, even though at that meeting they said, we believe that we've done good business, etc. And it's just hypocritical, and like they are hiding, I think, because they know their own failings and they don't have the capability to deal with difficult questions. And it's... we mentioned earlier, or sort of last week, about the fact that O'Neill was kind of fronted up to be the shield, as you said, Stuart, and how he was having to front questions. But now they're doing it to the new manager as well, and it probably would have been supportive of him if someone from the club had kind of batted away those questions, and certainly this week they could have come out and sort of batted them away as well. But it's a lack of leadership across the board, and every department at the club seems to be run really poorly. And it's a different story when they can put out statements left, right and centre, but when it comes to live difficult questions, they kind of run for the house. And
that's the thing, when it comes to the supporters groups, like, the Green Brigade and fan media being banned and all that, there's no right to reply for any of that. There's no way to contest anything. The board have decided, the club have decided, and that's it. And it's not healthy, Stuart.
No, we talked about it last week, about the sort of Trumpian nature of some of the statements and the way in which they're trying to control various narratives, and just avoiding... You can avoid difficult questions by avoiding any questions, and I think that it tells its own story, but it's just, again, every single thing has been almost orchestrated to make Nancy's job as difficult as it can be. He's fielding questions constantly about, what he needs for January and how the board said they'll support you, etc. He's having to pass comment on this sort of civil war that's been going on for months now. I'm sure he has been filled in by certain quarters. I know that Martin O'Neill had said, he would advise him to not get involved, all that sort of stuff.
Can't not, though.
In many ways, I thought he's handled all that pretty well, where he's kind of just gone, I'm just the manager right now, and all I can do is try and give like a good product on the pitch, etc. And I think that's as safe a ground as he can be on right now with all the moving parts. But it's just such a bad look that I wondered whether or not they were going to like put O'Neill with him or something as almost like a transitionary, like here's your new man, here's this, but just to have absolutely nothing. And that if he's a big success, they'll take all the credit for it. But they've done next to nothing to set him up for success. And so if he does pull it out, it'll be in extraordinary circumstances, probably off his own back. So it's just pretty sickening. And over the piece, it just makes it very hard to feel connected with the club when you've got this slightly nefarious situation unfolding and being at a point where you don't really see where it's going, how it ends, where there's positive change. Because I think the currently, we would only get the change we want if things go really badly on the pitch. And I don't want to go through that, and I don't think anyone else does either.
I was just going to say the point about they weren't there to support him in his first press conference, but they were there greeting him getting out of the car. And I thought it was so strange that Chris Mackay was there. Like, why? What was the need for him to be there?
Yeah, exactly.
Paying for the taxi.
Yeah.
And the other thing,
have you got a receipt there?
and the other thing is, the Celtic Collective are trying to get this collective fan union off the ground, which I would implore everyone to, get involved when the time is right and when it comes. We're certainly involved in it. We had the walk, myself, Barry, and a few others. We walked from St Mary's. When you turn up at that church, it's such a gorgeous building, and it means so much, and it's so, rich with history. You get the famine memorial as well. And we did the walk, and you feel so connected with the history of the club and what the club stands for in terms of the overall view of it and all that. But you just feel so disengaged with this sort of cold corporate feeling.
Do you know what I think? And I thought this the time before the Falkirk game. Remember we had the kind of protest outside the main stand, and you have all the people who are in the Wilfried suite coming to take photos. Like
That's
we're
right.
standing in the pissing rain.
That's right.
And it's like, I don't know, it's like voyeurism. We'll look at them out there. And that's not to say people are there for the day and maybe they are supportive of the movement, but it kind of was I thought it was quite ironic that we are standing soaked, marched for a bit of solidarity and obviously giving money and food to the needy with the food drive, and they are kind of all looking out, laughing and filming and taking photos as well. It's a
bad day to have your birthday dinner at the Wilfried.
I know.
We'll certainly cover more of this. I think we'll probably do some more Celtic Collective stuff, and we'll talk about the fan media, ban. The fan media access has been revoked, and honestly, it doesn't feel like that'll ever change. And I certainly don't think we'll get back in. But that doesn't mean we're not going to cover Celtic. Before we get to, we want to look at Roma. We're probably not going to have enough time to go full deep into the St Mirren game, but we'll certainly do that over the weekend. Before we get to the Roma game, okay, Stuart, Celtic's top scorer, who is it?
Benji Nikrin.
Okay, 7 goals. Barry, who's second?
Dyson.
Absolutely. Who's third?
That's a good quiz.
I would say it's probably Hatate or McCowan.
No. Oh, you've got it. Go for it.
He doesn't play.
Calmack?
No.
I was going to say he doesn't play for us anymore when you said I can't think.
Johnny Kenny?
Johnny Kenny.
Oh, there we go.
And then our fourth top scorer, basically there are 3 players tied on 3, McGregor, Hatate and Iheanacho. So Iheanacho has hardly been involved in his 3 goals behind Dyson. The fact of the matter is we are not scoring goals. Is that a concern for you with the game coming up, Barry?
Yeah, I think that's been our biggest problem. Well, there's been lots of problems, but I think the fact that we can't put the ball in the back of the net, and early in the season we weren't really creating chances, but now we are and we're missing them. And I think I can't ever remember a Celtic team missing as many sort of gilt-edged chances as we are, and I don't know if it's a lack of quality, a lack of composure, a lack of belief maybe, because as we've said many times this season feels like it's lasted 2.5 years and we're just in December. And I don't know, I think people often say, like, will the players be aware, but I think they can't help feel the sort of disconnect between the club and the fans. And obviously, as you mentioned, they're on to their third manager of the season, so as a concern, I think we have to try and find a formula. I would like to see Iheanacho come back in if he is fit, because I think his hold-up play, if nothing else, would certainly bring those two number 10s into play more often. I think Dyson was trying to do that. He was coming deeper on Sunday, but you can tell that's not his natural game.
No.
So I think if we can get him into the team, that's providing he doesn't go into AFCON, he gives you that bit of a sort of focal point, because I think there was a couple of games where he'd played where he did look promising. I think his touch was good, and obviously the finish for the goal, when was that? That was Red Star Belgrade, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And again, even him, that game, he missed 2 or 3 gilt-edged chances, but I think he is a goal scorer, and whether he has the fitness or he's the long-term option, I think if he's fit, get him in the team to lead the line until January, and then you've got to hope that there is a striker who is going to sort of bury those chances lined up, because I think we're in for a long, hard season. And just to have a top scorer in December is 7. That's worrying. Like, I know Larsson was an exceptional player, but he'd have been on about 25, 28 goals by this point in most of the seasons that he was in.
I think another pretty shocking state of affairs is that, you know, we've got a game in hand, but our goal difference is not superior to Hearts, and we always joke about, goal difference could be crucial. Like, it actually could. If Hearts don't drop off, then it really could, because obviously that Celtic team are going to continue to, not week in, week out, drop points, but I think they could lose or at any point. And that is kind of surprising. So yeah, I do get the impression though that it's the sort of thing that might click at a certain point. I think the team, we talked a bit about that mental fragility when we didn't get the goal, and when we conceded the goal, the heads sort of drop, everything becomes quite rushed, everything becomes quite panicked, and that's not really the best way to function. And I just wonder if you can get into a way of playing where you're creating more better chances from maybe this new system. Someone catches fire, someone starts scoring, you start taking some of these chances, then the confidence, you back yourself, you back the system, becomes more dominant, and then you can kind of get motoring. See, when
we were saying that at the beginning of the season, and I didn't believe it, but I do now, just because it feels everything's a little bit fresher.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out a couple of comments. I won't read them all. From Trusty from the press conference. So he was asked, how's the last few days been trying to get used to the new manager but focus on a busy schedule? He replied, good. Obviously we had a poor result, our past game, but we had an off day to decompress and then come back in to get back on the same page. But it's been obviously good and we want to win. Sometimes losing is part of the gig, which that's the sort of line that would normally annoy me, but I'm okay with it a little bit. Sometimes
when he says an off day, does that mean they had like a day off?
Yeah.
Is you a fucking off day on Sunday?
Sometimes losing is part of the gig, and you decompress. You get together and then you debrief and find a way forward. I think there was always going to be a lot of interest as to whether the new manager would change things immediately or whether he would keep things the same. And then the second question, how much change has there been in that short period? Obviously, as players, we don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, we didn't know. But our role is to get on that pitch and play our game and do our thing. But yeah, we came in and we changed the formation up and drew up to players at that point to implement what he wants. He drew up to players to implement what he wants, and that's what we tried to do. It changed things up, I think, but also we developed the game. I had a lot of the ball and made passes, and a lot of it came through me and from the outside centre backs. At the same time, pushing the wing backs higher up the pitch also allowed for some rest defence. Yes, it changed things up, and I think it's a good change. Sometimes change is good. I'm just going to read one quote from Nancy because I don't want to just be babbling about this. He basically how are you feeling about your first European game at Celtic Park? I feel good. Obviously, the first game in 2 games, we've got days to train. You know what? Just go and fucking read it. It's on you. Listen to it. It's on YouTube. It's on fucking YouTube, man. At the game itself, right? Celtic versus Roma. I think it should be made clear that in a normal situation, this would be a tough game. Yeah. Right. Just looking at something, Roma's recent form isn't great for them. They've lost the last 2 games.
Roll up. Boy, have I got the team for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They lost to Napoli 1-0 and then they lost to Cagliari 1-0. In their Europa League group, they've played 5, they've won 3 and they've lost 2. So they've not had a lot of draws this season overall. It's been wins or losses. Maybe this is their first draw. Who knows?
Take, yeah, absolutely.
Gasperini, we know Gasperini's, instructs his team to press high and to press aggressively. There's a very similar layout to what Nancy does. Nancy has spoken about having studied Gasperini, so that's certainly a good positive thing. Stuart, it's very hard to predict lineups and stuff because after what happened on Sunday, I'm in 2 minds about whether Nancy makes 3 or 4 big changes or whether he just tries to persevere. What's your gut telling you?
I thought that it was either yourself or, bloody hell, shouting him out again, Will, made a good point the other day that I don't think he's going to be sentimental. I don't think that what players have done this season will really hold much water depending on what they can do for the team. I thought, broadly, Liam Scales has picked a really bad time to hit a poor run of form after having a really, really positive season where he was quite bad in O'Neill's last couple of games. Yeah. I thought he was really poor at the weekend. So if you're wanting like a better passer in the centre of the pitch, I think Trusty's a better passer than Scales. I would love a right footer in there. Jemai Simpson-Pusey's not in the squad, so he can't play.
Donovan has played in the back three for Scotland, yeah.
So that might be one that he looks at. And again, I don't think he would have been particularly impressed with what Tanetki was offering us, so maybe it's something in that. My biggest worry about tomorrow is just that quality of opposition. Roma were the top ranked seed in the competition, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So this is, albeit with home advantage, as tough as it gets. And my worry is that even on a normal day, any sort of errors, I think, will be capitalised upon because of the quality of opposition. They have players that can just kill you straight away. And I do think that the way in which we were turning the ball over on Sunday just won't be acceptable at this kind of level. And so I really, really hope that I'm going into it just hoping we don't get battered, essentially, because I think the optics of that are quite bad, given how things came out. And do you know what, the one image that I cannot get in my head, and you can both sort of tell me where this was from. Do you remember in Postecoglou's first season, we played in Europe, we lost a really bad goal, and there was that screenshot, and it was Ralston, maybe Taylor, were in like the centre circle, and there was players behind them, and everyone was like, why are your fullbacks up there? And
Leverkusen, was it?
Maybe, yeah. It was
Celtic
when
Park.
People were being extremely critical of Postecoglou, and you can't play this way, this is not a sort of path to success. I can't stop thinking about that and wondering whether or not we're going to end up in a similar situation where it's like, oh, this person's like badly out of position, oh, you can't play this system, why are you playing this system? I think you do just have to accept there's going to be a little bit of short-term pain and teething problems when you try and implement something like that. The players aren't perfect, it's not the best playing squad that we've ever had, and so all of that just makes it a really daunting sort of tie.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say about Roma is they're struggling to score goals like us, similarly, which is maybe a positive. Have we got the team for you, brother? Barry, is there any other kind of positives that we can focus on that, maybe from the other night or from something Nancy said or just vibes?
I think what the point that Stuart made about the criticism and the sort of media frenzy is turning Celtic fans maybe going full circle to be more defensive of Nancy. And I think it probably is the worst possible game you could have, as you say, the kind of top seeds and going into a cup final. But I just hope that we can catch them cold. Like we can, if we are able to get the first goal, if we have that start where we go all guns blazing, as we've often done at Celtic Park in European games, then I'd like to see if we could get a goal up, preferably 2 if I'm being greedy.
Interest you in 3,
I was
Ben?
going to say, why not 3? Let's go.
But I'd really like to see us like kind of ride the wave of this sort of chaos ball, for want of a better phrase. But the worry is that you do leave yourself wide open at the back, and like Stuart, I don't know if I could stomach right now see like another heavy defeat, and then all the negativity that would then spill into Sunday, because that's the last thing he needs. But again, it comes down to the board. Like, why the hell did they think this was a good week to drop a new manager in from a completely different football environment with such a specific sort of philosophy and coaching style and formation? But on the flip side, if he was to get a positive result tomorrow night, it just kind of ramps up positivity going into the final, because we can see, right, we saw 20 minutes against Hearts that was good. We saw 60 minutes against Roma, even if it's like a score draw or whatever. Then we'll think, right, another 2 days training or whatever to the final. But if the players can get a positive result, you get the fans on side, you get more of the players on side, then it just builds momentum. So if we can get through tomorrow without a hiding, even I would probably even accept a narrow defeat if the performance was good.
Yeah. I think I'm of that mind as well. If we perform really well over 90 minutes, and we're unlucky, or it's one of those Celtic in Europe goals, then I would accept that, as long as there was tangible is not the right word, but as long as you could see what they were trying to do. Yeah,
I'm really like not looking forward to the game, just for everything that we're saying that could go against us. But in on the other hand, I'm very excited to see just more of it and get a bit more information, and something that, because of the nature of Sunday, I don't have much of a gauge for how well we can defend in that system, because the 2 goals that we conceded were just so bad individually. One's just a corner, just handled so badly, and even then, like, you don't defend it very well. But fucking hell, Michael, you got to get down to that. And the first one, as we've said, is a catastrophe. Other than that, I don't think we were put under an enormous amount of pressure. And when Hearts did have spells like that, people were like killing themselves to get in front of blocks and stuff like that, and it was all quite positive. Obviously, we're going to be under a lot of pressure for the majority of the game tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see how the system holds up to that. Does that make Roma more susceptible to counter-attacks, or are we just going to sort of cave under that pressure? It would be funny if it just turned out that Trusty and Scales had the hex on Gasparini, and he's just like, not these guys.
See, in terms of obviously the game against St Mirren in a cup final, it's again something quite hard to judge in terms of what they do. Will Stephen Robinson set up thinking it's a cup final, I'm going to go for it? Will he set up and think I'm just going to sit back and pick my moments? So there are 2 games that are coming up where it's very hard to kind of look at it from a perspective of this is how we think it's going to play out, because honestly, it's just really hard to kind of really think about that. But the Roma game, for me, I would take a really tangible, good performance, seeing change, seeing positions and all that stuff, and then on to the cup final, where it'll take care of itself because it's a cup final. But let's hope, if he loses both, I think he's in big trouble. If he wins the cup final, and even if we get stonked against Roma, I think he's probably still going to be okay, because I think that can lead to something. We're talking about his second game and his third game being must-wins. Yeah. Aye.
Sorry, just to jump in, just kind of lastly on the Roma game, it got me thinking of Angie's first season, where we went to Betis away, and obviously we came out at 4-2, 4-3.
Yeah.
But I think that was when you started to get a lot of buy-in, because of the way Jota played that night. Tom Rogic was incredible, and we could see, even though we lost, we thought, right, we've gone toe to toe with, I know Betis aren't at the level of Roma, but if we could get something similar for that, I think it would.
Yeah, if it finished like 4-3 or something, and we were just unluckily on the end of it, or 3-1 or 3-2 or something. If we score some goals, we show some promise, and we're just there.
And the other thing I wanted to say was, Alan often used to say that even if you get beat in Europe, your levels are that high that sometimes spills into the next game, because you're playing at such high intensity. You're playing against elite players, and then that carries on to the next game. So again, if we could take the positives out of that, I'd be delighted.
And it'll be interesting to see how the system fares against a team that aren't going to just sit in a low block. Yeah. Maybe it creates much more space and it creates much better chances, or who knows. I do think that Nancy's not overawed by it, and I think any accusation that he can't handle the pressure or he's not equipped to deal with like European football, even if we get beat tomorrow, I don't think that he's like scared or intimidated by that. And also when it comes to cup finals, he's got course and distance of winning. Like the very nature of the MLS league means that he plays a lot more knockout football, like real consequence football than most. So Sunday's more important in the grand scheme of things, but it would be great if you could take some positives from tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. A Celtic legend passed away during the week, Dixie Deans, an incredible goal scorer for the club, someone who get 2 hat-tricks in 2 cup finals. My father was a huge fan of him, talked about him a lot. I remember for some reason we had the 74 Scottish Cup final on tape, where I think it was on Sportscene, or like we had on tape, and for some reason I watched it. Like it was only like 7 minutes. It was all the goals and all that, and for some reason it always kind of clicked with me. And I was really sad to hear that he passed away, a real legend of the club, and unbelievable. Should we finish up? Is there anything else you guys want to?
No.
Mention?
What did you think about the colour of the wee things on his tactics board? We've not really spent 15 minutes getting into that.
I thought it was a disgrace and he should be sacked instantly.
Agreed.
They should be the colour of the Ireland flag.
Yeah.
Lovely.
My prediction. My prediction, I'll put it on record. If Wilfried Nancy is a success at Celtic this season, whatever your metric for that is, presumably trophies, Celtic will sell that in the Superstore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Megastore.
Thank you. Listen, it's been a joy. We've got lots of stuff coming up at the Cynic.co. Tomorrow we've got the reaction to the Roma game, which we'll record and be released straight after. On Friday we'll have the weekend update. We'll look ahead to the cup final and kind of get into the bones of any of the news that's been about. And then on Sunday we'll do a reaction to the cup final itself, which we'll record again after the game has finished. Cynic.co, check it out. We've got on average about 34 podcasts a month, and lots of content, lots of contributors, lots of ideas, lots of opinions, and stats and tactics and all that as well. Stuart Duggan, an absolute pleasure, so thank you very much.
Thanks, we got there.
Got there in the end. Barry Gallagher, as always, a joy. Speak to you very soon.
Thank you very much. Sack the board.
Absolutely. From Stuart Duggan, from Barry Gallagher, from myself, Chris Gallagher, this has been the Cynic Weekly, and we'll speak to you down the road.